just get promoted.
And actually, yes, we are related. Okay.
Thanks you all for coming. I just wanted to let you know sort of who we are. We are the Woodstock Sustainable Woodstock Energy Group. Norwood, myself, Sally, and a few others, Barbara. We have been, our mission is to promote energy conservation, energy efficiency, and sustainable energy in Woodstock. Over the past year, actually last year, we were involved in a project called Solarize with Vital Communities, and we helped get 26 new homeowners hooked up with solar power in Woodstock, which is a great achievement. Solarize is a project that's been going around the state, both Vermont and New Hampshire, the past year. We are also currently involved in trying to put together a community solar project that would be locally owned and developed, looking for land for that. We believe that solar energy is a good thing. It helps our pocketbook, it helps our economy, and hopefully it will help save the world. That said, nothing is perfect. We're here to talk about a specific solar project in Tassville. I know you all have, judging by the crowd, quite a few questions to ask. So with no further ado, we will get to it. We'll hear about the project shortly. I'll introduce Norwood Long.
I'm your moderator, so you can expect not to hear from me until you've had plenty of time with Tom. He's your main attraction. Oh, and our speaker tonight is Tom Garden of Triland Associates. Partners.
Yes.
Who will describe the Tassville project.
Thank you for all attending. I appreciate you being here tonight because I think this is obviously becoming a controversial project, but I hopefully by the end of the night will have explained it in enough detail, the project, the site, who I am, what I do, why I do it, and some of the other things about solar development in Vermont, in New England, and nationally, how it's financed, what are those tax credits about, and who's making all the money. Anything you have a question about, I want to talk about it. Any detail you'd like. I'll be as late as you want. I'll come back again if you want. There's a lot to talk about, and I love talking about solar. I will tell you right now, I talk about solar all day, every day, because I'm paying it forward. My son was at the University of Vermont. He was graduating. We were in Burlington to celebrate his graduation. We were at a bar. He was a year behind his friends because he's a snowboard fanatic and he snowboarded more than he did studying sometimes. But he graduated with honors, and I was proud of that. But I talked to one of his friends who had graduated on time, and I said, so what are you doing? He said, I'm a real estate developer. And I said, what does that mean? I said, I've been doing that my whole career. He said, I'm looking for brownfields and dumps where we could put solar. And I said, well, why would you do that? And he said, because there's a new law being passed here in Vermont that's going to buy the power. It's a law that's going to be enacted to make the utilities buy the power to incentivize developers to go build solar. It was the recession. It was 2008. It was 2009, May of 2009. The law was passed in June of 2009, enacted right away. And in October of 2009, they had a lottery. And anybody who had a site or had a project of any kind, wind, solar, hydro, biomass, could apply to sell that power from that project to all of the utilities in the state. I was interested, I was intrigued, I knew how to develop real estate, I knew how to finance real estate, I knew it was a recession and it wasn't easy to finance things, but I knew that if someone was buying my power, I could finance it. That's how I got in this. I was selected and I built a 2-megawatt solar development at Exit 5 on I-89. It's right on the interchange. If you were going to Williamstown, you were going to Norwich University, you'd pass by that project. I was the first one in the state.
Tom, let's let these folks that are looking for seats come up.
Come on up, and you can have this seat here. And I was the first one to sign a contract to sell that power. And I did that with never having done it before, with never any assurance that I was going to be able to finance it or anything else. It was a risk, but I thought it was important. Number one, I love Vermont. I went to school nearby in New Hampshire, and I spent a lot of time with my family who live in Norwich and Wilder, and I just loved Vermont, and I wanted to spend more time here, and I have for the past 5 years. Doing solar, talking about solar, paying it forward. So how do I end up in Woodstock, of all the beautiful communities I could be in? Well, I have land under control in a lot of towns in Vermont, specifically to do projects. Some are as large as 20 megawatts. This is 500 kilowatts, but it's controversial because it's Woodstock, and Woodstock is special. And I believe that. I've spent weekends here at the inn, weddings and things like that, and I love Woodstock. Should I bring change? Should I avoid Woodstock because I will bring change? I don't know the answer to that. But all I want tonight is a dialogue, to answer questions, to try to explain it, to try to be open-minded, to listen to your ideas, to your negative feedback or positive feedback, and to hear my answers, because if you're open-minded, I'm open-minded, something good could happen. I promise, something good could happen. Or maybe nothing happens. We don't know. But I'm willing to take the risk to do something that I think is beneficial to everybody here, everybody who couldn't make it tonight, anybody who pays an electric bill every month, by saving you money and doing it with renewable, clean, green energy. It really comes down to that. Last April, there was the opportunity to meet with the Energy Committee from Woodstock to talk about doing a small net meter project at the wastewater treatment plant. With Sally. We were there as a group of us all there, it was a beautiful morning, and we talked about how hard it was to, where we could put a 10 kilowatt, just a few panels on the roof of the sewer treatment plant garage. And this is exciting because this was the first sort of thing the municipality could sort of pursue in the solar venue. Well, a lot of other communities were already doing it. I was there thinking about it. I'd done a little research online. I'd seen in your budget that you had a fairly high electric budget line item that you pay every year to utility. And I said, from that, I discerned that you could use a larger system. And I approached some of your energy people and your executives in town and said, if you could use a larger system, why wouldn't you be pursuing that right now? The economics, the law, the net metering rules, they're all in your favor. And what came out of that was, we just don't have the land. We don't have enough land, and the land that the town does own, it's not suitable for solar. It just is the wrong topography or whatever it is, it's just not suitable for solar. And I said, gee, I'm pretty good at identifying land that's good for solar. If I could find a suitable site, would you be interested in maybe being my net meter customer? Yeah, that's all I needed to. It's just a nod. I got the nod, and I do what I do. At my own risk, at my own peril, at my own, success or failure, I said, I'll go try to find something, and I looked at a lot of land. Now, the interesting thing about Vermont, I don't know why this happens, because in other states it's not this way. But in Vermont, if a town wants to use renewable energy, they want it, for some reason, to be in their town. In Massachusetts, there are communities, or let's say Andover Academy. It's getting net metering credits from a project that's so far away they'll never see it in the state of Massachusetts. They don't care, they're just getting the credits. But Vermont is like ownership. So I thought it was important that the site not be in Heartland, not be in Hartford, not be anyplace else, but be in Woodstock. I thought that was important, like it is to any other community that I've interacted with in the last 5 years. I selected the site that I did. A lot of people noticed the Spooner property. I think it's a beautiful field. Beautiful field. Is it perfect? I'm not so sure it's perfect. Would I want to live there? It's not my preference to want to live beside a cemetery. Call it personal. I just don't want to live beside the cemetery. Do I want to live on a piece of land that has a 46,000 kilovolt power line running down, not one side, but two? Probably not, if I had my choice. Just me. Other people don't mind. Just me. So I looked at it and said, listen, if I lived here, would I object to it? I said, well, everybody objects to something, somewhere, somehow, sometime. They don't want that kind of house, or that color house, or that bigger house, or that smaller house. Whatever it is, we all have preferences, and we all like to see, if there's gonna be change, change your way. I looked at it and said, can I do something here that's changed my way, but still makes everybody else feel like, well, it could have been worse. I guess it's not that bad. How do I do that? I do that by communication. So before anybody knew much about this, I was talking to your town manager, I was talking to your head of planning and zoning, I was talking to your planning commission, I was talking to your energy commission. When I put the land under contract, I was sending out an aerial showing it, so it wasn't surprising anybody who was close to it. And then I started talking to the neighbors. My neighbors. It's my land. I'm buying this land. I'm gonna own this land for as long as I can, because I think it's a beautiful piece of land. I happen to like it. Will solar be there forever? No. Solar will be there 20 years, 25 years, maybe 30 years, and then I own a beautiful piece of land. It's just like my land in Williamstown at the interchange. I'll be 80-something when that contract ends with the state. And guess what? I'm already thinking about what am I going to be doing with that land when I'm 85. That's just the way I am. I'm going to die with my boots on, so to speak. But I don't know what I'm going to put there. It may be solar for another 20 years. I don't know. But that's what I love about real estate development. It's always got me out of bed early in the morning. I said, I want to go see what I can do to create value, to make it worthwhile, to bring value to me, bring value to my neighbors, to bring value to the town. So is solar bad? I don't know. Maybe it is from your perspective. But from mine, it creates clean green energy. It makes no noise. It creates no contamination that any of us know about. It doesn't create glare. They put some of the largest solar farms in this country beside airports because they've proved that the sun shining on the panels does not create glare of any kind and therefore blind the pilot coming in for a landing. It doesn't create heat. It doesn't create electromagnetic field, so to speak. And I know a little bit about that too because when I was a real estate advisor, consultant, investment person in New York City, when we owned a 1 million square foot office building, we had to put a new transformer into the sidewalk. We cautioned people to say, listen, if you have someone who's pregnant, whose office is going to be on the first floor, maybe you move them for a while. Because nobody really understands electromagnetic field. But what we do know is everybody will tell you that they don't come off of those 46,000 kV transmission lines like I have on my property, or what will be my property. But I just don't know if I want to live that close to it just the same. But nobody has ever said to me, we've proven it, that those are dangerous to have nearby. No one's ever said that or believes that. But I'm not a scientist, I don't know that. So I kind of look at the site and I said, there's other infrastructure in the area, so people must be a little bit used to it, but that's not a good reason to put it here. Why would I put it here? I'll put it here because I'm set back from Route 4. And I know from all the development that's going on in the state of Vermont, that I follow very closely, that some people don't like driving that close to it. So I said, well, I'm going to be at least 300 feet set back. And then I've got all these buildings and I've got all this, already existing landscape that's going to essentially shield this from Route 4. But then I said, well, what if somebody is looking? How much will they really be impacted by it? And I said, okay, well, if I'm heading towards Woodstock, heading west, let's say, I get a pretty quick view of where it would be if it's on that hill. Pretty quick, though. I've got to be looking for it. And if I'm heading east, and I'm heading towards 89, I don't think you're going to see this at all unless you're craning your neck to see it. So I started to think, okay, I don't think my visual impact is anything that's going to be too obnoxious. At least I hope that's the case. But getting back to what I started with after I tied up the site, I started talking to my neighbors. The people who should be most concerned about what's happening next door. There's a stranger in town who's got a Boston accent. I have no idea who he is, what he does, but he's talking, he wants to do something, he wants to change something. And I just started to say, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, how do you feel? To a person, I got everybody to say, or again to say, they just either neutral or they were favorable. That's all. Nobody said, are you kidding me? Nobody said, not over my dead body. These are my immediate butters, the ones who will look at this, the one who will know it's there, the ones who will see it. But I try to emphasize to them the same thing I did in Williamstown, which was, and we can prove it, no noise. There's no diesel trucks running at night. There's no fumes. There's no traffic. There's no impact on the sewer system. There's no impact on anything. It's so passive, but it's positive for what it's doing for our environment, for your electrical bills, for putting a piece of land to use that will pay taxes to the town, that will pay taxes to the state education fund, that generally is trying to accomplish what the legislators are trying to do, which is to make Vermont the greenest state in the country, essentially. You have a comprehensive energy plan that says by 2050, 90% of the energy used in the state will come from renewable energy resources. And for that reason, they passed that law in 2009 that said to the Public Service Board, you're charged with expediting the deployment or development of renewable energy resources in the state of Vermont. And that's become the issue. The issue is that the towns don't get a whole lot of say, whether it's a small system or a big system. We're considered energy developers. We have to go through the Public Service Board. Now, I've sort of read through the paper that we're circumventing Act 250, and we're circumventing this and that. Nothing can be farther from the truth. Every bit of criteria that a developer has to go through under Act 250 is incorporated into Section 248. I have to meet every single criteria, and I can prove it because I have to pay the consultants to do the studies. Environmental, aesthetics, wetlands. I'm paying those bills, and I'm doing it because I believe in this. Now, is this project going to happen? I mean, I'm told, how do they develop that? It's wet. It's all wetlands in there. No one's been able to do anything. I don't know the answer yet. Honest to God, I don't know the answer. But I've walked enough fields in Vermont and sat with enough farmers to know that there are certain acres of almost every field out there that you just don't mow at certain times of the year. I'm a guy who lives in the city. I just don't know. You don't drive a tractor over that part of the field. Okay? There's a lot of that out there. But there is nothing wrong with siting solar in a Class 3 wetland under the state's guidelines. And this is technically a Class 3 wetland. And I'll tell you why, because I'm just paying it forward. This is what I learned 5 years ago. If I'm a farmer and I want to put a fence around my farm, I can drive a post any darn time, anywhere I want. I drive posts. I drive steel posts, and they hold the solar panels up. I'm not disturbing the ground soil at all. I'm not trenching, I'm not bulldozing, I'm not grading. I'm just using the natural vegetative state of that field, keeping that grass, native vegetation intact, and pile driving, like any farmer can. And that's why the United States Army Corps of Engineers says, you're good. You're not breaking any laws. So, I don't know if it's a loophole or not. I don't know. That's just plain how it works. If a farmer can do what they say, I can do it. So that's why you see a lot of it. Because even if it's a wetland, so to speak, a Class 3 wetland, which under the Vermont laws, a Class 3 wetland has no significant functions and values. In other words, there's no animal life growing in it. It's only maybe temporary and things like that. I don't know if anybody's looked, but at least a third, maybe a half of the Townsville Cemetery is a wetland. The same wetland as the Spooner property. It's the same wetland. My case, my feeling, is that wetland is done by people who are looking at aerial photography. I don't know when they made that all up, but that's how they did it. They didn't walk out there and say, hey, that whole section there is wet. They just did it from aerial photography. So I'm going to spend the money to go and say to my consultant, who's been doing this for 30 years, hey, you tell me, you're the expert, what's wet, what's dry, what's uplands and what's wetlands. We may all have been wasting time tonight because we may find out the whole thing is wet, but I don't think so. Because I was out there with my environmental specialist last fall, we walked the entire site. I feel pretty good about the fact that this is not a secondary piece of farmland. It's a pretty nice piece of land. I think it's a pretty nice piece of land. And I'm looking forward to owning it for the rest of my life. And maybe my kids will own it after that. And I'm hoping I'm going to make some solar energy on that land until then. So, with that, land under control, talking to all my neighbors over the winter, talking sporadically to authorities here, I started to move ahead with the plan. And that's where we are today. On Monday, my attorney filed what's called a 45-day notice. My media butters all get that notice. They might have gotten it in the mail today, or maybe we'll get it tomorrow. But I went to the Public Service Board, Department of Public Service, and the Regional Planning Commission, and the Select Board, Planning Commission. Everybody gets a copy of my 45-day notice saying, this is my plan, this is what I want to do. And anybody can weigh in on that. Anybody. You can all be part of the process. And 45 days from now, after I've done a lot more due diligence and had other people to the site, state representatives, like I already have, such as the state's head of historic preservation, come out to the site, walk it, and tell me, you know, am I doing something wrong here? I did this a long time ago. This was back in the fall, because why would I spend all winter working on this? Nobody's paying me to do that. Unless I did a little bit of upfront due diligence, step by step by step. I'm incredibly into the details. I'm incredibly into the details. If you have a question and I don't know it, I will find out the details. Just the way I am. If you have a brief with the project, listen, I'm not going to hold it against you, but I want the details of why you have that beef. Because if it's a misconception, I want you to understand that. There's a lot of misconceptions about solar. Everybody looks at the guy from out of town as the bad guy, and I don't understand that. They look at the investor as the greedy investor who's making all the money. Can I just dispel a myth? This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Trust me. Number one. Number two, tax credits. Who the heck's getting these tax credits? Everybody wants to know. Let me just explain something, because listen, I think I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. But I learned it in the process of this situation. A tax credit. What that means is somebody owes the government taxes. He has a choice. He can write that check to the U.S. Treasury on April 15th, or he can write that same check to invest in a solar project. And he doesn't have to give it to the federal government. It's not like he owed taxes and he said he was an investor, so now he gets a tax write-off. He still pays his taxes. But instead of it going to the federal government, it goes into a solar project so that the project is now subsidized by the investor so that now we can afford to own solar. We can afford to get the energy and have a net meter credit on our bill, and we get to save money. We all benefit because of that tax credit. Nobody got to pay less taxes. They still pay the same. This is phenomenal. This is, I mean, if you really think about it and understand the process, you'd say, heck, I want solar. I don't know where or how, but this is unbelievable. We're making those guys pay for something that we get the benefit of. It becomes more affordable to us so that we can net meter. There's a state tax credit as well. 7.2% of the value of the project. But it's very hard to get the banks, which is typically who can use the tax credit. This part of the IRS bill spawned from like the recession of, I don't know when, 1990 maybe or something, when they wanted to build more affordable housing in this country. And the Congress passed a law that said they wanted to make banks invest in low-income housing, because nobody was going to invest in low-income housing. And so they created this tax credit to incentivize the banks. That happened for about 30 years. And then back around 2000, the wind industry said, hey, we can use that into tax credits for our wind developers. And then during the last recession, they said, hey, if solar gets more affordable, we can use that tax credit we can make the banks invest in renewable energy. And that's what happened with the legislation. So that's a tax credit. It's not some rich bank. Just for the record, full disclosure, ask me anything. Bank of America owns a 2-megawatt solar farm at Exit 5. I'm a developer, I own the land, I don't own the panels, Bank of America. Because they had the tax credit, and they said, you know what, instead of just writing a check, we'll give it to the Williamstown Solar Farm, and we'll own it. Not such a bad thing, because that those electrons, so to speak, go into the grid, who knows where they go. But if you live up the street and you turn on your light switch, you might get electrons from a renewable energy plant as they're passing through those wires. That's just the way it works. It's that simple. So, I've spoken a lot. I know, trust me, I know, this is an emotional subject. Some of you are looking at me like, look at what he says. And some of you will be looking and saying, listen, I want to hear him out anyways. Whatever your position is, just let me know, because I'm sensitive. I'm a sensitive guy. I tell you the truth, I really am. And I want you to know that I want to make this feel like a project that is for you. It's for your benefit. It's in your town. Listen, it may not be perfect. It may be in the view. It may be seen by tourists. It may be seen by people who have to pass every day. I still think there are other extenuating circumstances that make it a real benefit to this town. I think it's great for the environment. I think it's great that anybody who's a member of this group saves money every month on their electricity bill. That's what it's about. I would welcome questions. And if the moderator wants to call on people, if you want me to call, I'll do either way.
Why don't you proceed, and if it turns out that a moderator is needed, he'll step in.
Now, I don't even remember what I just said because I think I was talking too fast. Anyways, but if there's something I didn't cover, or if there's something I said that you want to call me out on, just talk about it. It's simple.
Just to help me understand, are you saying that specifically any Woodstock resident would see a specific discount in their electric bill that you can point to that project and it would show in my electric bill
Yes.
per month? Really?
Yes, under the rules in Vermont, the way they've been enacted in Montpelier is that you're allowed to become a member of the group, the net meter group. This could be for a solar farm anywhere in Green Mountain Power's territory. Green Mountain Power provides 80% of the electricity used in the state. So anybody who's a customer anywhere in the state can be a member of the group for a solar farm on this property.
Oh, all right. Well, how do you become a member of that?
So let me explain a little bit about that. I have a partner. My partner is called Blue Wave Capital. They're based in Boston. Out-of-towners, out-of-staters. John DeVillas is the founder. John DeVillas is a very well-known name in Massachusetts because John served in the Dukakis administration as his head of the environment. And then he served in Washington as the New England chief for the federal government for the environmental things. And John's just a pretty amazing, well-respected individual. John did the first solar project way back on a brownfield in Brockton. And now John's company, Blue Wave Capital, has done probably 40, almost 50 megawatts of development in Massachusetts. And he has offices and operations all around the world now. John owns a small farm in Stowe, he and his wife. And so he's up here a lot. He wants to do something, and we've known each other as partners, and now he used to work together. And so John's my partner. John's doing community solar in Massachusetts, and we're going to do together his first community solar project in Woodstock, I hope. And essentially what's going to happen is anybody who comes through our website and signs up will be a member of our group, and based on how much energy you use, you'll be able to get net meter credits that under today's law are worth 19 cents. Unfortunately, if we had done this a year ago, the credits were worth almost 21 cents. Downward pressure. So anybody who built solar a couple of years ago is going to get a more favorable deal. It's going to pay off sooner. It's going to work out better long term, but that's just the way it is. So to be a member of that group, you'll be going through probably a Blue Wave Capital setup website to engage. So listen, we call it a community solar. That's our goal. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
In other words, the energy that's being produced by the system is not going to go into the grid for the general population drawing energy from our grid.
Yes, it is. I think
It's not going to save them any money.
Okay, two questions. First questions. All these electrons, they go into the grid. They go fast. So, they're going into anything that's attached to that electrical line on Route 4, anything that's attached to that. Both directions.
So the power is owned by the grid?
It's owned by Green Mountain Power. It's supplementing all of the energy that they have to buy from any other resource. Green Mountain Power buys a lot of power from Hydro-Quebec. They buy a lot from a wind farm. They buy some from Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant. They get resources from all over.
I guess I have another prong to my question. I realize that the ownership of the energy produced is one aspect. Another aspect would be the renewable energy credits. Where are those going?
Where are those going? Touchy subject. Really touchy subject. Can I come back to that in a second?
I'd rather you answer it.
I know you would. But in between that question, there was one statement, not a question, but a statement that no one's going to save any money. Is that what you said?
Yeah, unless you buy in, the average consumer is not going to get any benefit on his electric bill because of it.
Okay, what do you mean by buy-in, please?
Well, did you say you have to buy in as part of the?
Yeah, let me explain that, because that's a good question, because I know there's been been a lot of confusion on this. That's a great question. So in order to be a member of the group, you sign up. Essentially sign what's called a solar services agreement. And you're going to get a credit that by law, on your bill, for each kilowatt that you sign up to get, is worth 19 cents. You don't pay anything to be part of the group. I take all the risk. I finance it, I pay for it, I build it, I take all the financial risk. But every month that you get that 19-cent credit on your bill, you're going to pay me 17 and a half, something that I need to finance the project. Okay? So that's buying in. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, it adds up. It adds up. Yes, sir.
Might I ask, how much would you make off of this?
Yeah, what's the profit? Why are you doing it?
If you're making a profit off of it, how much are you making? If you have this field going for
Okay.
so long.
Okay. You want to know exact numbers? You want to know
I don't want to
percentages?
know
You want some
exact numbers, I just want to know
facts?
an average.
I'm not sure where you're coming from.
Well, if
All right,
this
let me ask you
is
this. Let me just put it another way. I don't mean to be a wise guy.
No,
Is it
no.
okay if I make money on this?
Well, no,
No?
I don't
You
understand.
want me to do it for free?
No, but as long as you're not destroying that back field down.
Okay, so I want to go back for a second. Did I answer your question? Buying in?
Yeah.
There's no upfront cost to anybody to be a member of the group. To save money on your bill, there's no upfront cost. That's my upfront expense, my upfront investment, and my upfront risk.
So you get 17.5 cents per watt?
Or no. You get on your bill, if you say that you want 10 kilowatts a month of credits, that's worth $1.90. You're going to pay me $1.75 for that dollar, and you're going to save the difference.
You're
So
gonna say
I say
15
15 cents.
You're going to save 15 cents.
I'll pay it up.
It adds up. Okay, fine. But you know what? Then what you're really saying is that all those people out there, they're stupid. That's kind of what I hear. Because that number adds up. Trust me, it adds up, and I can show you a model for you individually to show you why you want to do that. No upfront expense.
How do you determine that we would pay you $1.70 and we would get to keep 15 cents? Why wouldn't it be that we get to keep 50 cents and you get $1.20? Or, how do you determine that amount?
I determine that amount by how much this is going to cost me, how much the tax equity investor is going to put in, how much I can borrow from a bank, and what the numbers are to make a return. It's not
Have
like
you computed when you believe, all things being equal, that you would be even on this, that your investment would even out? How long would it take?
this project will make a single-digit return to the owner of the project over the life of the project. So I don't know exactly what the payback is, Okay, on
You
that,
haven't figured out when you're gonna be even?
no, because I look at it as having a 20-year loan on it. So it's paid off at the end of the day, yeah, paid off at the end of the day. That's the way I structure the loan,
Single digit as in 1% or 9%?
somewhere between 1 and 9. Yeah. So I'm taking all the financial risk. I hope you don't hold that against me. I hope that you wish that it's double digits. But it's just not gonna be. It's Vermont. It just isn't that enough. There isn't enough sunshine in the state of Vermont to make it like a windfall. It just isn't. So I need to go back for a second to a very important question about renewable energy credits, because this is a hot topic. A year ago, 2 years ago, I was talking to a group, nobody even asked about renewable energy credits, nobody knew about it, nobody was thinking about it. So developers like me just said, well, they're there because that's how we're supposed to finance our projects. And if we're able to sell those renewable energy credits to help finance the project, then we will.
Tom,
And
can I
people did.
interrupt just a second?
Yes.
Could you explain what a renewable energy credit is? Because I'm not sure everybody's
Okay.
going to understand.
So a renewable energy credit is essentially tied to anything that generates electricity from renewable energy resources. Whether you have a wind farm or a hydro farm or a solar farm, you're generating electricity, and for every kilowatt, or kilowatt hour, let's say, of energy that you produce, you are essentially said to have produced a renewable energy credit. That's just calculated right off the meter by the amount of energy that you create. And that credit can be sold to somebody who's making electricity or using electricity from a non-renewable energy source. Okay? Kind of confusing, but what that means is that if Eversource down in Massachusetts gets some of its electricity from a fossil fuel burning natural gas plant, then under law in Massachusetts, they have to buy a credit for a kilowatt. Every kilowatt they buy from that gas plant, they have to buy a credit to offset it. That's to prove that the law just essentially is trying to say, we don't want you using fossil fuel, but to the extent you have to, we want you to invest in renewable energy credit to make up for it. So what's been going on, one second, okay? So what's been going on in the state of Vermont is that your utilities, yeah, not talking about a whole lot, but your utilities, they build all kinds of renewable energy plants, whether it's wind, whether it's hydro, whether it's solar, and they generate electricity. And they generate renewable energy credits. And they sell those renewable energy credits. Mostly to Vermont, mostly to Connecticut, but a lot to Massachusetts. And that's the way that they keep energy prices in the state of Vermont low. That's how they keep your energy costs low. Now, is that good? Yes. Would you rather that they didn't sell them and instead retire them and you all paid higher electric prices? It's a choice, trade-off. But right now, just for the record, that's the way it works in this state. Now, what just happened? What just happened is the state of Connecticut had an energy company that said, wow, this is not right. They've got nice low electric rates that aren't going up. They didn't go up last year, they came down in the state. Every place else in New England went up 11% last year, June to June. 11% in New England. 3.5% nationally, United States. Went down, like 0.1%, but went down in Vermont. Okay? But the entity in Connecticut said to the Public Service Board that regulates utilities, hey, they're keeping their rates down because they're selling all their RECs. And they're telling everybody they're green energy. But really they're not green, they're selling off their RECs. Okay? And so the state of Vermont, the state of Connecticut's Public Service Board, and then Massachusetts following suit said, time out. We're not buying any more RECs from you guys. So what happened? So Green Mountain Power for the past year has been sitting on, I don't think I'm speaking out of school, they may not like me publicizing this, but been sitting on $40 million worth of renewable energy credits that they desperately wanted to sell out of state. Because with that $50 million, this is multiple utilities, $50 million, with those renewable energy credits, they keep your energy prices down. And by the way, they make more money. So, that's just the way it works. Because the utilities were in trouble this past year, because they couldn't sell those RECs, and they didn't want to pass through higher rates to you guys, the Department of Public Service in Montpelier came up with a new bill. It's in the legislature right now. You can read it tonight at home. It's called House Bill 40, H40. It's called a reset bill. And it's going to do something in Vermont that you don't have yet, but everybody else in New England has, which is called the Renewable Portfolio Standard, RPS. And because of that RPS, what it's going to say in there is that every utility in the state is going to have to retire a certain amount of RECs. They never had that requirement before. Never had that requirement before.
By
Now they're gonna have
retiring, you mean, I'm sorry, retiring?
Meaning they can't sell those RECs to Massachusetts or Connecticut. Okay?
So they go into the metal world?
They go in the metal, put them in the drawer, rip them up, whatever you want. They get retired. That's just.
If they sell them to Ohio.
No, they're not gonna be able to sell them. They're gonna have to, by law, have to retire them. Okay? That's the way it works. All right? Now, they're gonna still generate enough, they're gonna be able to sell a ton of them. But they're gonna have a requirement that a pretty significant percentage, I think it's 10%, and it goes up 1% a year. Starting in January of 2017, the utilities in the state are gonna have to retire something like 10% of the total energy that they use in the form of RECs. They're gonna have to retire those RECs.
But a REC seems to be a negotiable currency.
It is.
Can you explain why the legislature would demand or legislate that they retire them, throw them away? It's like throwing away dollars, is it not?
It's a great point. It's a really great point. And that's why when I get pressed and somebody says to me, a municipality typically says, hey, what do you do with those RECs? I typically say, I'm selling them because I need to finance the project. And they said, no, we want to retire. We want you to give them to us. And I always say, great, I'll give you all or none. But I always put a caveat in there that says, but if you ever change your mind, there's another recession. You can't make your budget. Whatever it is, it's a pool of capital. It's always going to be out there. If you ever change your mind, you have to split it with me.
Tom, there is one other wrinkle in this I think you're not touching on, which is that there were lots of RECs sold, and the utilities in Vermont claimed that amount of renewable energy themselves. So they were allowing a utility in another state to claim renewable energy because they bought the RECs and claiming it themselves. That double counting is what is in Act 40. And that's why they're going to retire RECs starting in 2017. I don't think that anybody is going to stop claiming and selling RECs, but just once. I don't think Act 40 gets rid of RECs from Vermont. What it does is prevent Vermont from claiming the alternative energy, and the buyer of the REC in Connecticut, Massachusetts, or any place from also claiming the electricity.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of a war of words, but it wasn't like the Massachusetts utilities were saying that they were using green energy. They weren't saying that. All they were doing was satisfying their legislative need to make up for the portion of their energy generation that was coming from fossil fuels with those RECs. But they weren't creating out saying, we're green, they're just saying that we've accounted for it. But it's important to understand that every year going forward, Green Mountain Power, Washington Electric, every other utility out there is going to have to retire a certain amount of RECs that's going to increase every year. So what just happened? House Bill 40 isn't even passed yet. But Green Mountain Power just went out and tied up land all over the state because it's going to build 20 megawatts of solar. that it's gonna own itself. Not really many people know that. What else just happened? They sent me and some others an RFP and said, we want another 15 megawatts of solar. We'll let you build a project up to 5 megawatts, and we'll buy your power. Okay? 35 megawatts. That's year one. They want those online for January 1st, 2017. It's a lot of solar. And they need that much every year going forward. Get ready. You're going to see more solar in the next 20 years. It's coming.
I don't think that will.
You know what? I'm pretty much into the details.
Okay, but
Pretty much into the details.
I do have to say one thing, is that, and this is something that we've heard over and over again from legal experts, is that if you are selling your RECs, you can no longer claim that you are producing renewable energy. Because your energy is, your RECs are now being claimed by an out-of-state company that is not producing clean power. And so what you are actually using, even though you have this solar system and your energy is going into the grid, if you have sold your RECs to a company that's producing dirty power, they're the ones claiming those green credits. You're left with nothing. And that's where the double dipping goes. You can't claim renewable power here and renewable power there.
So Sally, you don't need a legal expert to tell you that. You know that. It's just common sense.
Well, I know, but
If it's, but I look at it this way. If I have a solar panel in my backyard and I'm using that energy to light my house, and then I happen to want to sell that renewable energy credit to help pay for that solar panel, I'm not that worried about it. I'm not worried about it too much. I mean, we all want it to be green energy. We all want to improve the environment. If somebody out of state is still having to use gas, natural gas to create energy for right now, because that's affordable, more affordable, and again, you know, utilities would love to just change if they could, but to some extent, you can't. They just can't. They have to provide power at an affordable price, and they just can't ramp up all that cost right away. Your question first.
Thank you. I'd like to know what land studies you've done and what soil studies you've done, and if you are aware of the impact of what's going to happen when that soil is disturbed, and if you are aware that approximately 18 years ago, developers tried to work on the adjacent piece of land, and there was a lot of flooding that ensued from that. So I want to know what impact those panels are going to have in the construction, and what kind of growth, and how are you going to maintain the vegetation, and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. If I miss anything, stop me and come back to it. Okay. So, as I started saying earlier, I like to do development with solar that's as low impact as possible. I have a driveway access right beside the cemetery. Gravel road. It's all I need. My construction will last 2 months, maybe 3. I might need to improve that gravel road because I'm going to get about 12 truckloads of material over the course of those 2 months. And I need that trailer to be able to turn in and turn out safely. All right? So that's one thing. That road may need to be widened a little bit.
and where will you widen that? There's a swale to the east,
Oh, wait.
and then
Okay,
there's
no, wait a minute. It's a good question, but let me answer it just the way you asked it. The existing driveway is approximately 18 feet wide. I'm going to own 90 feet of street frontage, 90 feet of uplands that I can do anything I want with. Create my
There's a
road.
culvert that sits underneath that road right there.
Say it again, please.
There's a culvert that lays right underneath that part of that road.
What road, my gravel driveway?
Yeah, where your gravel driveway is, in that woodland section, there is a culvert that runs underneath that part of the
Okay,
road.
I might have to rebuild that culvert then.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
There's not a lot of it, but it's just underneath it.
Okay, well, I may have to do something with that. But hopefully I don't, because
You shouldn't
Again,
have to take it.
so you want, just understand, during that 3 months of construction, workers coming in with their trucks, materials coming in with their trucks, and then for 20 years, somebody mows it maybe once a season, maybe twice. Maybe a maintenance man comes once a month or once a quarter. That's all. Why, I don't want to build a superhighway into that site. But what if I did? What if I improved that road? Maybe one of the things I could do was to create a little bit of parking for the cemetery. Because it looks to me right now that the cemetery has no parking.
We don't need
We don't
parking.
need it.
People don't park.
We don't want it.
Fine.
I understand. To my knowledge, you have not been in touch with us,
Thank you. With whom?
with the cemetery commission.
I'd love to talk to you. I have not,
That'd be great.
I didn't know there was one. I'd love to talk to you. You might be able to help.
We still haven't answered
Okay,
the question
all right.
in terms of have you done
Soils.
any land?
Soils, you want to know, okay. So my goal, do I want to go in, make it level, gravel down, make it so no grass grows, so I don't have to mow it once a year or twice a year? Yeah, I'd love to. I'd really love to. I can do that very inexpensively. But guess what? I'm going to do it this way. I'm not going to grade it. I'm going to leave the grass, the native vegetation that's there, just the way it is. Now, I don't know the name of it, but it's some kind of very pretty purple flower.
Lupin.
I mean,
And
it's
there's
hard, but I
best
don't know.
apples in the world of trees up there.
Yeah.
Apples are interesting to me. But the lupin, can we replant the lupin someplace?
No.
Yes.
Can't it?
Little South Sea.
Yes, but you I think that's well outside.
Come on.
It's gorgeous.
By the way,
Yes.
what do we look,
Oh, no,
aerial photos?
what it looks like in the air?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm in a higher elevation, you know, if you had to look down on it, you know, you're looking at a sea of black.
I don't yet. I don't have that area. I have one that's from the sky looking down. It's just a
I'm talking about
schematic.
an existing, you
Yeah,
know,
no.
I mean, if you had your home, you know, would you want to be looking at?
Love to. In
At
fact,
a sea of black?
and just for the record, I want to go back to your question
I
first.
also
Let
want
me
to know
finish
what
that.
the exit plan is.
So, okay, yeah, that's another good question. So, native vegetation.
Yep.
The topography remains exactly the same.
But it's covered by panels.
How many panels? That's
Okay,
my
all right, now let me,
How
okay,
many
so covered by
panels are you
panels.
gonna do to the
Covered
ground?
sounds negative to me. Okay, so I've got a panel that's at a 28-degree angle. Okay, it's about 3 feet off the ground, and it's about 9 feet off the ground, a row of panels. And it's off the ground because when the snow slides off, it piles up. And if it's touching the panel on the bottom, it shuts down the whole array. Okay? So that panel, that whole thing is maybe, I don't know, maybe it's 10 feet wide, but I've got probably 30 feet from post to post. These are rows. So it's not like I'm laying a tarp, and now I've just got a sea of glass there. I've got rows. You're gonna look down and see rows of grass between the,
The snow doesn't actually fall off the panels.
that's, so let me, okay, before I go there, did I answer everything about?
No.
What was it? Oh, yeah. Okay, so the other thing is, I helical screw, or I pile drive my posts. Those can be anywhere from 6 to 10 feet deep. I hope not.
You know,
No, I haven't tasted it, but I will be.
with all due
I hope it will.
respect, I
Yes.
think we are, all of us, I can't speak for everyone, I can speak for myself, we're all, most of us, environmentally conscious. And it's not that we're against solar, and it's not that we're against you as an outsider or not, because reality, most of us are flatlanders. But that, it's, I don't think it's the project, it's that piece of land, which I don't think really is a good choice. From
It's
what
our
I know
village.
about it.
In our village.
Okay, can I talk about the village?
No. Back up before you start answering.
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
Just wanted to know how many questions you're gonna keep backing up before you start answering some of the ones that have been brought up already.
You've got to stick, you've got to keep pressing me, because my,
I asked about who owns Rex, you haven't answered that yet.
who Who will own the Rex? I don't know, but I'm gonna sell the Rex. I have to sell the Rex in order for you to save money. And let me explain why. No, in order to explain why. If I was doing this on town-owned land, I probably wouldn't have any rent. I wouldn't have any rent, I wouldn't have any land payment. And you'd probably give me a tax holiday. You probably wouldn't charge me any taxes for 20, 25 years. If I was doing this for the town, on town-owned land, okay? But you don't have the land. So I've said, I'll go out and try to find the land to put this, and I'll pay for the land, and I'll pay for the taxes. I want the town, but what I'd like to say is that, hey, if you use the energy and you're saving money, can we cut back on the taxes? I'm not asking that, but nothing's free. So how do I make it work? So yes, I want to sell the Rex like everybody else, and I don't know who's going to buy the Rex.
Who will own energy and who will own the Rex, and I'd like to see that stay in Vermont.
So, let me put it this way. Green Mountain Power, if House Bill 40 passes, is going to need Rex every year. I'm guessing they may be the buyer of my Rex. I don't know for sure, I can't make them, but I'd like to think that they're going to buy the Rex and retire them. That's my hope.
So, Tom, do you own the property yet?
I have it under contract to buy it, I do not own it yet. I'm excited to own property in Tassville Village.
Okay, well, we're not excited to see panels.
Tell me why.
Speak for yourself.
Tell me why. Because you don't like change, or you don't like panels? Are you afraid of the health hazards, or?
All of the above, I know.
'Cause there are none.
Here in this town.
Might not be one of the- there's- Can I just put this
There's
in
no
here, because you're
benefit.
talking about how the land, and you've gone and checked it out, and supposedly you've looked at it for the past while.
Folks, are we through with Rex? I'm feeling a little, I'm hearing a little frustration.
Well, no,
Hopping around.
this is a frustration, but this is one, have you ever noticed how much water actually does come off of that back hill, and how many springs are sitting back there, and how much water comes through there, and the amount of groundhogs that live in that hill? That, we had a sinkhole open up behind our houses here.
Are
From
you, where do you
groundhogs.
live?
First time, a small sinkhole that,
Where do you live?
we live right next to your driveway, in the trailer, right next to anything printed. And we had one open up there because there was so much water coming off that hill this year. And notice from past years of how it floods the houses down. And what are you gonna do about that drainage? Because if you're gonna put these panels up and digging them down, and they're gonna they displace water enough that it will,
I would be
Knock them
displacing
over.
water.
Which is why
Wait,
I asked
wait,
what
wait, wait.
studies you've done.
I would be displacing water if I was putting impervious surface down, blacktop.
well, I hope you're, well, I'm not saying,
No, no, no.
yeah, but even if
So-
you're putting close enough, but I'm talking about for what animals do live out there and dig that field up, those holes go deep, and they're all through that whole area. And I've watched them for years, and I've gone after them for years.
I don't know anything about the holes, I don't know anything about the groundhogs, I don't, honestly,
Well, they're ground dwellers, and they open up the ground enough.
so you know what? No one's gonna stop them. They were there before me.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
not gonna-
I'm just saying though, for if you're putting your panels up, would that
But,
cause
but let
any
me-
for how many?
yeah, but let me tell you this. If there's a water issue, I'm gonna try to correct it. Now, I was there last week, that brook behind your house, that was raging.
Oh, yeah, well, you should have seen a couple weeks before that one
Okay,
really comes
but
up.
that's because of this, so you know what? I'm looking at all of that.
Well, no, but-
And I've got one of the best environmental guys in the state, in Art Gilman, from Gilman and Briggs in Barry. He's been doing this for 40 years. And trust me, Art is gonna look at what is right and what isn't right, and he's not gonna let me do anything I can't do.
Yeah.
The board's not gonna let me do anything I can't do.
Yeah.
Do you have a budget for this property?
A budget for the whole project, yes.
Question.
Would you share it with us?
Yeah. I think it's about $1.5 million, without, not including the land.
And is that your personal
Not
money, or
including that.
partner's money, or combined money, or loan money?
It doesn't make a difference. Let me answer your question, but it doesn't make a difference,
Well,
or you're gonna hate the project anyways, because you think it's Tassville. Now, I respect that, but I just don't, I'm gonna be facetious when I think that the motivation of the question isn't really.
well, why would you do this if you're not gonna benefit from it? Why would you put that kind of money into
I'll tell you what, it's not because of greed, which you happen to think solar is about greed. I know that because you shared that with me before. It's not about greed. okay? But why would I do this? I'm doing this because the state is saying, we want renewable energy. We want 90% of the energy used in the whole state to come from renewable energy resources. And they're saying, please go build it. And I'm trying to accommodate the state. Because I'm just that, I'm a good guy. Could be facetious. Yeah. I will make money. I will make money. I will not get it. Wow. Just like you will do everything.
Okay, folks, we're getting a little out of hand. Tom, would you watch the hands up? There's a lady here beside you who's had her hand up for a long time.
So my question is, you're from Massachusetts.
Yes, I
And
am.
you're here in Vermont, and Massachusetts has a renewable portfolio standard. So can you explain to us what the difference is between you're doing a development like this in Massachusetts versus doing a development here? Is it more lucrative here? Can you just tell us what the different schemes are, and has Vermont set policies that are more beneficial than Massachusetts? Because it would seem to me that as a Massachusetts developer, you'd be more interested in helping Massachusetts meet their RPAs.
You're not the first one to tell me that. So a rec in Vermont, which is part of the way you finance a project, in Vermont, you can sell that for about 5 cents out of
A
state.
kilowatt hour.
5 cents per rec.
Or a kilowatt.
5 cents per kilowatt hour. 5 cents. In Massachusetts, by law, there's a floor. It can be as high as anything, but it can't go below 28 cents. 28 cents. They make significantly more money in Massachusetts. And that's why there is so much more solar happening in Massachusetts than there is in Vermont. So much more. Because of that reason. So much more.
So why are you here instead of there?
Yeah, I don't think it.
Sorry, but he's here for the same reason we're here. He wants to make a living in Vermont.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
I'm just trying to understand the different
But
structures.
I don't know how you want me. Is that a trick question? Because if
No,
I
it's
say
not a
one
trick
word,
question, it's an absolutely
I'm here,
straight question.
but I think because I want to create renewable energy in Vermont. That's what I want
So
to
are you
do.
telling us that you would make more money if you did this in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I am.
I just have a question, like,
Yes, ma'am.
in the town meeting on March 4th, you mentioned that you talked to all of but one of the abutters. I guess you're the one who didn't talk to. But, and that you noted that there was nothing but support or just not ambivalence about the project. But a lot of butters are here, and I didn't know if you wanted to hear from some of them. Because when I talked to them,
We abut every inch of that 15-acre parcel. We own the land that's uphill from you. And I know the issue for us is solar farms, solar, but the issue for you is water. And to prove my point, all you have to do is go back and check town records going back to 1995, to check court records going back to 2006. And you will see how the water going off the land that we own, that we've owned for about 20 years, has impacted Darlene and I. We've had threats of litigation. We've had to fight litigation, and all because of the water coming down at you. You become the defendant when you're asked to show up in court. And obviously, when you get that first letter from an attorney, you go out and find an attorney for consultation and for your defense. You find hydrologists to prove your point that you haven't done anything to damage the property. The only thing that we're guilty of, with all the issues that we've had to deal with over the last 20 years, the three things that we're guilty of is restoring the land to its natural state and finding the best people in the Upper Valley to do it. John Bruno, the engineer, Gurney Brothers Construction, having the town keep a careful eye on the work we were doing to restore that land, to make sure it was done right, and we passed with flying colors. We sugared the forest. We have horses from our neighbor grazing on our land. We brush hog it once a year. And yet over the last 20 years, for 10 of those years, maybe even more, we've been involved with threats of litigation. We've been involved with court cases. And it's cost us probably close to $150,000 to defend ourselves. Frivolous cases, no doubt frivolous cases. But it doesn't matter how frivolous the case is, because you have to defend yourself. So your issue is the water coming down from our hill. It impacts our neighbors. It impacts, I haven't mentioned before, Bruce Robert. Nice to meet you. What he just described. And, you know, I go up that hill every day, I hike it. And even though we won the case, the judge found in our favor. And he said, you will never be sued again unless you tamper with your land. You change the topography. You do something to it other than having horses graze. And every time I go up to the top of that land, I look down, I see the water just channeling down to our house, to our neighbor's house, to Route 4, to the Spooner property, because every drop of water coming off of our property is heading to Spooner. I think it's going to happen again. Even though the judge has promised us it shouldn't happen, I know it's going to happen again. And we constantly ask ourselves, is it worth it owning this land? Was it worth it purchasing? We purchased it to stay out of court. But, and we had neighbors come to us just a few years ago. They wanted to put the trails through our property to add on to the Tassville trails. We didn't dare touch that property, that field, for fear of what it would cost us. So, I mean, my advice to you is that you're going to be going in there and you're going to be changing the land. No matter what, you're going to be changing the land. And so, be careful. No matter how careful you are, no matter how well you manage that property, the threat of litigation stands in your way. And it's cost us dearly.
Okay, so let me talk about that. Just really quick. If you look to the left side, what I'll call the west boundary, right there. That is what he's talking about. He owns all this land over here, and this is the land I'm purchasing. So, in other words, your land's on the other side of the high tension
Where
line.
uphill from?
You have no idea how much water
You're
comes
up-
off that.
So that water comes down, okay? So when my environmental specialist and I walked the land last fall, we noticed the bank was really wet. The bank, it was almost like she was sitting there, she was standing there going, it's almost like, I said, where this boundary line is, used to be the road. That used to be River Road. That used to be,
It was the Woodstock return.
okay? And she said, I remember her saying this out loud, and she goes, I wonder if there's culverts somewhere bringing the water down. Okay? But what we did was we walked everywhere trying to see where that water goes and how it moves. And trying to determine where can we put solar? Where is there uplands to put the solar? And that's where I feel comfortable based on that preliminary walk around. And now we're just waiting for the spring growth to start so she can delineate wetland plants from non-wetland plants and that sort of thing. But I think, where Mrs. Spooner's home was, where her septic system, where her well, where her gravel driveway is, the state has that mapped as wetlands. I walk on a lot of wetlands. That's not all wetlands. Some of it is, but not in certain areas. And certainly, I don't think parts of the cemetery that are shown on the state's maps as wetlands.
Tom, I'm just trying to be a good neighbor.
And I appreciate it. You've done your part.
Check on those town records, check on the court cases. I don't want you to experience what we've experienced.
Well, listen, I have a loving relationship with water. You get a leak in the roof, whatever. You can't do a thing about it in this state. I can't really do channeling or anything else, technically. But I'm going to find a way, within the rules, to make it work.
But
Because
check
I
those
do
town
believe...
records, check those court records.
Thank you.
Can I
Wait a
just
minute, I think
back
this
that
one's
up,
first.
because when we had burials in the cemetery, and we dug a hole, we had to put some pumps in them to get the water out
Yep.
before we had the burial.
Okay.
What is that?
You have no idea how much water comes off that hill.
I'm getting to, because I've been over there. You know, I was here the other day, and I couldn't believe how much water was in the brook.
Yeah, well,
Well,
that's not, what's in the ground.
No, it's not a dry issue. We had more snow. That's something.
You know, I was talking about their experience when I went back 18 years. And because I know the town had to come in, put another sewer, because I used to be their neighbor. And I wound up moving kind of around the corner up the hill, so my view is going to be, should this happen, is going to be very black panels. And as I said, I'm not against solar, but that land is a very, very, very precarious piece of land to touch. I purchased my land in what I thought was a wet year. I didn't have a clue. I mean, there were springs the following year, and I did farming, and I was dependent on weather for my hay and everything else. Well, as I said,
You should have seen after Irene how much water was coming off the hill. And it flooded that whole backyard.
There is more water coming off
I'll
that
tell you
hill.
what's interesting, there's a lot of solar that's been built in Vermont, beside rivers and in floodplains, and incredibly, I don't know how these people do it, they petition that they're gonna elevate the panels higher off the ground, you know, so, because they know it's gonna flood if it's in a 100-year floodplain at some point in time. And they said, well, the wires, everything's gonna be above, but it's not the water, it's what's moving in the water.
Yeah.
That, to me, I said, so, trust me when I tell you that I'm real careful about water. And I may find something out in the next month that we all wasted our time tonight. But my sense, my early on sense, is that this is gonna work.
Do you know the Barton Solar Project, Bob Grant, from Massachusetts?
I know Bob, and I know a little bit about the project.
So anybody who wants to understand what happens when you build on wetlands, and that project was built on a site that was almost entirely Class 2 wetlands, just take a ride up there this week. There is massive sedimentation coming off. The neighbor across the road had to dig a trench because the drainage all got rearranged. It's, I think, equivalent to the water issues that you're dealing with. And they got a wetlands permit because it was a regulated permit. And right now, there are real problems with the site.
I'll say this. You can't build solar in a Class 2 wetland. You can't. There's no permit for that. There's
They
nothing.
did.
Alan I read something about the wetlands on that. There were areas of wetlands where they wanted to clear some trees in a Class 2. But they graded almost that entire site. They moved, they had to cut all the trees, they had to stump it. They graded the entire site. It couldn't have been a Class 2 wetland. They never could have done it under the rules.
There's an
of the state.
MOU that says almost the entire site is a Class 2 wetland.
I'm into the details, and I would like to see that because,
Go ask
I'm Doubting Thomas, because I have fought so hard to permit sites, or to at least get the Wetlands Division of the state of Vermont to think about letting me put something there, and Class 2, I wouldn't waste 2 seconds on it.
But what I'm saying is that we now have an example of what happens when you build onto that site.
You also have an example of when you grade. I'm not doing any grading. I'm not doing any grading. Okay.
Build a road.
You having a chance here?
Sure. I'm definitely for solar, for sure. I wanted to know if you're absolutely set on this being what I would consider this a power purchase agreement. So purchasing power at a discount versus community solar, which actually allows the community members to own it. So if it's the right land, or if you can make the land work, I think what a lot of people in Vermont would like to see is for us to receive a stronger benefit, which is the community solar model, which would be very successful even at the 500 kW level. And yes, I mean, in a power purchase agreement, I know you're going to make money. You need to make a living, of course.
Thank you.
But your investors are going to make so much more money than the community model would then make for its Vermonters. We would be doing what solar is actually meant for us, which is that eventually we don't pay power bills because we created our own utility. That seems to be empowering Vermonters as opposed to the power purchase agreement. And would you ever consider, if it does go through and you manage to get through all of your wetlands issues, if you would consider switching from the power purchase model to the community solar.
I'm calling it community solar, just for the record.
But it's a power purchase community solar.
But it's a power purchase agreement
It is a
with
power
my
purchase
customers. For you to own it, absolutely.
I'm not owning it. I'm paying for power for the rest of my life at a discount. That's very different than owning a system. When you own a system, when I've paid it off, I don't have a utility bill.
Well, put it this way. When I met with the Energy Committee last summer, I said, you buy the power, and I'll let you buy it at fair market value.
The Energy Committee for...
Woodstock.
Okay.
Yeah, so they know that that's part of the option, is that they can buy it at a discount in the future. But you can't afford, all the people in this room to be a part of that,
Right.
you wouldn't make financial sense.
It does make financial sense. I can show you the model. I'd be happy to.
I'd love to see it.
How many houses would this actually, for this
Small.
type? Like,
Small.
how many houses would,
I have
how many would this
2,000
power?
kilowatt, I have a 2,000 kilowatt plant in Williamstown. It's equivalent to about the annual electric use of about 400 homes.
Right, so what
So,
would be going into that
100
cash flow,
homes.
how much would that?
The annual
50?
average usage of
Okay.
100 homes,
And how many panels total is it?
about 2,100 solar panels.
2,100?
Those are,
Area?
yes.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
you're talking
How many
about
are
the first
And
half.
it's only gonna power 50 houses,
No, about 100 homes,
100 homes?
yes.
But that's just the first phase, right?
that's
That's
two
phase
phases.
one.
And then there's gonna be another 21.
What is phase 2?
It's the bottom section.
That top square, so this is a 15-acre parcel. I'm allowed by law to subdivide it into 3 lots, 5 acres each. That's the code. If I can put if I can put a 500 kilowatt in 5 acres at the top, and I could put 5 acres in the bottom, that might be all I ever do. Right now, just so you know, I can't do my little dream plan. Not allowed by law. Can't do it. You will only probably see one on the site. But if the law changes, if it gets community acceptance, if somehow, the town says, we'd love to save money on our wastewater treatment plant and our water filtration plant and this, we'd love to save money on that, and others in the community want to be part of that, be members of the group and save money, if that happens, maybe someday there'll be a second one. But it's just a pipe dream for me right now. Just so you know.
What's the maximum number of panels that could be if you developed all 3 down the road?
There is an RFP on Friday, and I could apply to be in that program and put 9,000 solar panels on that site. Okay? I'm not doing that. I want to do a net meter community solar project in Woodstock. I don't want to overwhelm the site. I want to do a 500 kilowatt.
So screening, are you responsible for putting screening up and maintaining it?
So let's talk about screening. That's a hot topic, I think. I'm responsible to either come up with a plan that satisfies me, or satisfies you, or is dictated to me by the state. Guess what? I'd much rather do it with you and I as the cemetery commission.
Well, Vermont law stipulates our boundary needs, line needs to be maintained, so we have to follow Vermont law.
Okay. But Vermont law allows me to cut down trees on my property.
True, but then,
I hope.
no,
But what if there's a trade-off? Buy something that's
screening, you
more
know, I mean,
screening.
okay.
So just for the record, I brought an idea in Montpelier yesterday, actually it was this morning, no, it was last night, saying, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but maybe I could, even if the cemetery wants a little more land behind it, no, not that you'd have to own it, if I gave it to you.
No, we've been given land before, but we haven't given, especially wetland, we've done plenty of that. Yeah.
Are you subject to the Act 250 local review?
Sure it does. What was that?
I'm subject to Section 248, not to Act 250. But all of the criteria, and there's about 25 itemized criteria in Act 250. is what the Public Service Board makes me demonstrate I'm in compliance with. Now, local review, no. And that's the difference, because as an energy generating plant, historically in the state of Vermont, the Public Service Board has had purview, whether you're a hydro dam, 10 kilowatt hydro dam, or a nuclear power plant. Public Service Board has purview and always has, and they don't want to give that up. That's the answer to your question. I want to go back to one other question earlier. Somebody asked about what happens at the end of 20 years. Okay, so by law, the Public Service Board gives you a permit that's called a Certificate of Public Good. And in that Certificate of Public Good, it dictates that you're obligated to restore the property to the way it is now at the end of the operation of the solar farm. So I get a Certificate of Public Good that says you can operate this for 20 years. And at the end of 20 years, you have to get rid of it.
I thought that was only for 1 megawatt. Your property?
No, if it's a project that's in the standard offer program, and you get a CPG, right now they will make you establish a decommissioning fund. So they know the money's there. And there's legislation that's sort of trying to do that to every size project.
We did that with Vermont Energy too.
Yeah, there'll never be enough for, yeah.
Well, I thought we can agree that there's some challenges and some issues here. But what's the process going forward? From today on, who has to do what? Who blesses what? Who approves what? Or who stops it? What do we do now?
Okay, so Monday, I sent out the required notice. It's called a 45-day notice that I talked about earlier. And that's alerting everybody in the vicinity, if you will.
What's the definition of this?
It has to go to the abutters, it has to go to the town selectmen, it has to go to the planning commission, it has to go to the regional planning commission. So how that information gets disseminated, I don't control that. But now I have a kind of you have a 45-day period to voice, in the notice, my contact information is in there, or you can email me or call me to talk about it, or reach out to the Public Service Board or your state, your town, and issue whatever concerns you have. So that's the process. 45 or 43 days from now, I'm entitled to submit my petition for a Certificate of Public Good.
To the state?
To the State Public Service Board. Yeah. In the meantime, between now and then, I'll have Historic Division of the state back out, meet with them on the property, and they'll give me guidance. I'll have wetland specialists from the state, and they'll give me guidance. I'll have streams. I'll have water quality. I'll have a lot of archaeology. Yes, archaeology I've already been out there. So it's I have to go through all the Act 250 specialists for each criteria and get their feedback, and I present that in whatever form they give it to me. They'll send me an email or a letter, or they'll give me guidance, and I have to give that to the Public Service Board and show that I'm either following that guidance or working on that guidance or whatever that might be. That's.
And then
the Public Service Board holds a hearing. Might hold a technical hearing. Might have a site visit. Might not. But essentially, they will watch the process, and people can be as involved with that as they want to be, or as uninvolved as they want to be. And that's essentially the process.
Well, when and that did they say yes to this? Or no to this?
At the end.
The end being?
The end being when they give it to you. I mean, I'll be honest with you. That I know of in 5 years, there's never been a no. And part of that, and let me just tell you why.
Are we allowed as a community to petition against this?
Yes, you are. As an individual or as a community?
Oh, as a whole community.
Yes. Yeah, you're allowed. But I hope you won't, obviously. But I also caution you that if I'm doing everything I can to mitigate any aesthetic concern, and there have been lawsuits in the state from very wealthy people who didn't want to look at it in their backyard, who wanted that field to be made, people with very you know, strong financial resources.
Yeah.
And guess what? Public Service Board and the state Supreme Court have never said no, not to one of those cases. Because there's a law that says that the Public Service Board is obligated to expedite the development of renewable energy resources in the state of Vermont. It's that important to the legislators in 2009 to pass that law. Now, is that right? Does that make it right? Does that make it mean it should go everywhere? No, it doesn't. I'm hoping that you've seen that I've been thoughtful enough, thorough enough. I'm not saying this is a done deal. I'm not betting you. I'm not, you know, declaring it's you against me. I'm not saying I'm here and you're there and, you know, let's fight it out. I'm not doing it. I'm just saying, let me do my due diligence. Work with me. Ask me questions. Tell me what you want me to do if, in fact, it's going to go that will make you feel better about it.
Actually,
First or
Tom, I have one more question that hasn't been addressed, and that is, what sort of infrastructure off of the property will be required to build this?
Okay, so, good question. From the substation across the street from the general store, where all those high voltage lines come out of, and other lines, there is a single phase line that comes up Route 4 that needs to be upgraded to a three-phase line. Three-phase line is not anything you haven't seen before, but it's different. It's 10 feet higher, the pole is 10 feet higher, and it has a T on it. And that's the difference. And that will go along Route 4. Now, just for the record, I could say I wanted to go along Butternut Lane. Could I do that? Trust me, it's not my nature.
Along Route 4 from where to where?
It'll go from the substation, right where where the poles go now, right along Route 4, on the river side of the road, and then it'll cross into where my driveway is. And it'll come into my driveway and right to where my solar panels are.
That's it.
That's it.
Who pays for that?
I do.
You have to pay for
I pay for everything like that, off-site.
I just have another question, real quick. You sort of scrunched up your face when someone asked, when you're digging for poles, if you find shale. Yeah, my experience in Vermont is it's pretty shaly. So, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, would you blast?
No. So when I built Williamstown on a field, we did, I think, 16 test pits. We got, you know, pretty great results. But guess what? When you're driving 1,400 steel piles like we did, we hit about 100 cobbles. I don't think it was lead, it was cobbles. And if you ever saw an I-beam bend, it's unbelievable. You know, those things aren't moving. So the technology today that's sort of coming out of places like Vermont and Pennsylvania, where there's a lot of solar being deployed in rocky environments, is a screw that goes right into anything. Just goes right in. It's simple, happens, doesn't displace any soil. It's just called a helio screw. And but it costs more. That's why I cringe, because it costs you a little bit of a premium. But what they do is essentially they keep that machine on site, but they pile drive. And when they hit a cobble or they hit ledge, they just go back and they screw it in.
When you're pile driving, it's a steam pile driver or a hydraulic? Bang, bang, bang.
Yes, it is.
How many bangs per? Serious question.
Too many.
How many? Seriously.
Too many.
So it's going to be pretty noisy if the project goes forward. You can expect it to be very noisy for a long period of time.
You're going to be hearing that for, well, it's a long period of time. I mean, it takes about 2 months to build this.
What time would you start in the morning, say?
Well, you know what? What time does a contractor in Vermont start in the morning? Usually probably 6 or 7.
Well, the street cleaners start at 5.
So, there'll be pile driving.
That was just this past Monday.
Yeah, no, there'll be pile driving. I've seen it where there's rules in the CPG that say, they can't work after 5, they can't work after 6. And, there's ways to accommodate everybody, but my sense is that it's not going to overwhelm people from my other projects. I just don't think it does. And part of it's because traffic makes a lot of noise too.
Yeah, so these hills echo pretty good though.
Yeah. All right, well, you know what, that I apologize today, that if this goes forward, like I hope it does, that there will be noise that people are gonna have to condemn. Yes, please.
I just have a simple question. I know you came into the store and we talked a little bit at one point. What direction are the panels gonna face? Like if I'm on Route 4 and I'm looking at the field, if I'm standing in the cemetery looking at the field, will I see the black or will I see the poles in the back of the panels?
If you're standing in the cemetery, you're gonna be mostly looking at, you're gonna be looking, you're gonna be looking at between the rows.
Okay, so they're gonna, which way are they gonna face? Are they gonna face west or east?
They're gonna face, they're gonna face Butternut Lane. Can you see that?
Well, that's what I thought,
They're
but,
facing Butternut Lane.
Yeah, this is it, right here.
but all that looks like is lines to me, Sally. I can't tell what that is.
That's it, the panel over on the.
So
They'll be facing straight to the top of the hill, for
They're
where the
facing
end is.
Butternut Lane, and so they're sort of facing the same direction as the road is going. If you follow the curve of the road,
So will we see, if I'm standing on Route 4, will I see,
no, what you see is you'll see it from the side.
from the side?
From the side.
Okay, so I won't see just a sea of black?
No,
No, it'll be from the side?
no,
Okay.
no. Most people would prefer to look at the sea of light.
I don't have a preference one or the other, I was just curious.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the sole area of access for this project on Route 4?
The way I envision it, yes. The way I envision it. And just for full disclosure, I would like to think that I might have enough land to build a home, maybe for me, at the end of Butternut Lane, where I have a driveway access. Something that would fit the character of Tastro Village. Excuse me, sir? Oh, wait a minute, this woman, I promised her.
You had mentioned standard offer.
Yes.
Is this a standard offer project?
No, it's not, it's net metered.
So,
It's a net
in
metered, different
response to his
program.
question about decommissioning, you said that standard offer projects require decommissioning, but my understanding is that projects below 1 megawatt do not require any decommissioning.
They all require decommissioning. If it's not standard offer, I haven't seen them do a decommissioning fund, putting the money up today.
I don't think they require plans either. And if I may, I'd like to correct one thing you said about the process, because I think that's important. The 500 kilowatt projects go through an expedited process that's not the same as the larger projects. So there is no site visit, there is no public hearing, there is no technical hearing, there is no discovery, pre-filed testimony, or briefs.
There is pre-filed testimony.
There is
And the Public Service Board reserves the right to do site visits, to do technical hearings, to do all of that.
But
It's not
it generally
required.
doesn't happen on, so there is a big difference between the projects that are 500 kilowatts compared to the ones that are a megawatt and larger.
Let me complicate that a little bit more. A standard offer contract can be anything from 10 kilowatts to 2.2 megawatts. And those can have a decommissioning fund and a decommissioning plan.
Right, but this isn't standard
Because they're
offer.
standard offer. Net metering, there are two classifications of net metering, actually three. 10 kilowatts and below, 10 kilowatts to 150 kilowatts, and then 150 to 500. And you're right, there are different levels of process. If I was building a 150, it would take 10 days to get the permit. Just for that, 10 days.
Okay,
Wait a minute, I just want someone who hasn't had a chance yet.
Yeah, I got a question that you brought up with the pounding. Now, as you know, I'm with anything printed, I have machinery.
Yes, sir.
Now, you're going to have vibration.
How sensitive is your machinery?
Some of it is.
It is?
Not all of it, but especially the copiers.
Yeah, I don't think you'll get any impact from that. I really don't. I really don't.
And I'm just curious, because with the amount of pounding you're doing for 2 months.
No, it takes 2 months to construct.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that happened is we're driving panels, probably driving posts, it probably takes
Yeah.
3 weeks. And then we're
So-
putting all the
So we
system
have 3
together.
weeks to live with the vibration, basically, of the pounding.
If there is vibration, and I want to tell you, I didn't have one neighbor with 1,400 posts in Williamstown tell me that they had any issue. But you're a little bit closer.
Yeah.
So, but again, there is, I suspect, pretty consistent soil topography. I say that, I'm wishful thinking.
Yeah, I think you are.
There'll be cobbles and ledges, all that stuff, yeah.
The
I'm
ledge
sure there will be.
especially,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
I just have a hard time believing that you'd be interested in building a house at the end of Butternut Lane
Why is
with
that?
2,100 panels in your backyard.
No, I'll tell you why I would have trouble building a house in trouble of Butternut Lane. Because I have to drive under a 46,000 kilovolt electrical line to get to my house. That's
Why
why.
would you put that in our backyard then?
Say it again, please?
Why would you put it in our backyard?
No, it's in your backyard. It's already there, sir. It's already there.
I was one that's already there.
Oh, yeah, no. Listen, everybody wants to talk about a pristine field, but I'm telling you, it's not so pristine when you've got a 46,000 kilovolt.
Is this under commercial or residential? Because this is a residential property.
Yes, it is.
So what do you have to go through in order to turn this over to a commercial property since you are selling? Nothing, really?
Just so, to answer your question, right or wrong, there is no prohibition against solar going into any kind of zoned land. Right or wrong, that's just the way it is. And that's why there are developers who are abusing that. There's a lot of land that I've passed on, said, I don't think it belongs here. I don't think I'm violating a sacred trust by putting on a piece of property that has a wetland issue potentially, is relatively close to traffic, is already impacted by a transmission line, little things like that. I mean, it's not pristine out in the countryside. It just, and I know it's my perspective, and everybody's entitled to a different perspective.
But see, you're thinking about it and looking at it from one direction. If you go up on the other side of that, and go up on top of that hill, and those pastures where the horses and stuff are,
Yes.
that's a whole different view looking down, and then all of a sudden seeing a field of solar.
Putting aesthetic advantage.
And we all look kind of down.
Okay.
on
Well,
that.
here's an option. We can keep using fossil fuels and not have any view. We got 2 degrees.
Well, I like that. She's on my payroll. No, but, thank you. But you know, I have to respect that opinion. Some people don't want to look down on solar.
You know, you said earlier, one panel in my backyard. You said, yeah, that's
If it's
fine.
in my backyard, and I'm living at the end of Butternut Lane, I'm not, I'm not complaining. I'm just not. But I'm different.
I just want to ask Sally a quick question, and that is, this is a public forum now, we get to voice our concerns. How do we get our voice up to where it counts?
Yes, Chris will answer that.
I wanted to bring that up earlier. His application, the acceptance of his application is in the hands of the Public Service Board only. They accept comments from the town, from the Planning Commission, Regional Planning Commission, all the folks that he mentioned that got a copy of the application. There is no legal recourse for any of those entities other than through comments to the PSB. So there is essentially no local control. There is movement. There are movements afoot to try and get local control, but that does not yet exist. So what we're hoping that is that out of this, we will put together some specific comments that we could send along to the PSB that will help allay some of your concerns. That's the only recourse we have.
And Chris, could you say who we is?
Okay. At the risk of overwhelming ourselves with emails, the Energy Commission, Sustainable Woodstock will attempt to put together some sort of form of comments on this project. You can go directly to the Select Board, or you can go directly to the Planning Commission, or you can come to us.
And the town has notified,
We haven't
given
got it
up
yet.
He's been informed of who all the abutters are and their current addresses?
Okay.
Yeah,
So I have a question.
they legally had to get copies of that.
So I have a question. And will you be presenting comments both favorable and not favorable, or is Energy Commission going to take a position one way or the other?
We haven't talked about it yet.
Have you heard any favorable comments?
Yes.
Really? That lady. The lady who's on your payroll, who you said.
Yeah, no, she said, what would you rather do, look at panels or
Yeah,
or have fossil
I
fuels?
understand, but
generate
serious question. You made a statement about favorable and unfavorable as if they were in equal number. And I'm asking you a serious question. Have you heard from this community body, and I think there's a fairly representative number of folks who live in the area and abut the area of Tazewell. Serious question to you, sir, is have you heard any favorable comments?
Today?
Tonight?
Yes.
Could you, would you digest them for us?
I'll just tell you, I just pointed out to you, sir. She said, what would you rather have, a view of the solar panels? Or one fossil fuels?
I understand.
That's just one example. But listen,
I accepted her. I accepted her. With the exception of that lady, have you heard any comments that you would consider even marginally favorable?
Yes.
Would you cite them?
Yeah,
Could you repeat them?
I quite agree with your statement. I think everyone here should read Naomi Klein's new book on what's going to happen if we don't start displacing our fossil fuel resources. It's really grim. Our grandkids are not going to have the same world we had. And I know there's an NIMBY factor, and this isn't in my backyard, so, you know, I might feel differently, but I will react fairly positively to this. I think it's...
Can I just respond? I'm going to respond to that. Wait, I just want to respond to the comment of a NIMBY factor, and I've been very quiet and I'm part of the Energy Committee. My concern is way beyond the NIMBY factor, okay? It's the fact that Tom has no problem selling Rex out of state. I have a problem with that. He's a Massachusetts company. I haven't heard yet actually who the contractor is going to be, who's going to be building these. I don't know if they're going to be a Vermont contractor or Massachusetts or a New Hampshire contractor. I have a problem with that. Okay? I have a problem with the fact that the Rex are being sold to Connecticut or Massachusetts or wherever, and in reality, they're not our energy anymore.
You did hear me say that I'm hoping that Green Mountain Power, with the new law, House Bill 40, being enacted...
You're going to be selling them, Tom.
Yes.
You're going to be selling them.
And you know what? And I'm also buying the land, and I'm also paying taxes to this community, and all these things. Okay, so in all fairness, you know, you have to allow the way that these are financed all over the country today is through this mechanism. I'm not doing something that is frowned upon in nearly any other community.
It doesn't make
or
it right
state.
in my book.
And that's fine. I respect that. But I just don't want it to be, you know, just this, he's selling them on a stage. I want to respect the fact that I'm telling you that I'm hoping they're retired right here.
If the project goes forward, will you use local contractors?
May I address that before anybody else has another question? When I built Williamstown, it was in 2012. It was still a lingering recession. From 2009 to 2012, every single firm involved in that project came from Vermont. And where it could be, it came from the Williamstown area. My environmentalists, my attorneys, you name it, my surveyor, everybody came from Vermont. This is a give back. This is a give back. The contractor, my partner in the project became a Spanish steel company. And I insisted that the builder come from Vermont. I said, no, we contact all the country. And we built it with real good soil, who hired all Vermont people to build it. And I said it was important because in 2012, we're trying to build an industry and give people in the trade experience, and they got it. And it's been ramping up every year. I'm very proud of the fact that this is a give back to the state of Vermont project. That's the way I operate. I'm very proud of that. Yes, ma'am.
Great that you just mentioned that and cited your Williamstown project. Can you tell me if that project is completely funded and where those energy credits go and who's getting the energy from that project?
Yes, I can. I explained before, I own the land.
No, I'm talking
Bank of America owns, in Williamstown, Bank of America owns the panels. The renewable energy credits go to the
speed. Do want to put community first, then considering a community solar model would be fantastic.
And you're going to show me a model where it doesn't cost anybody anything, we can all have solar.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, okay. But you're going to own it.
It is community owned, so everybody buys panels within the project, and it specifically goes to their electric bill, not to, general, getting a 2-cent discount on your bill for 20 years and it has to be decommissioned. It is owned by the people, basically like shareholders, if you will.
I've seen
in
that
a
model.
solar, right.
Okay, I've seen that model.
I just feel that what I hear in this room is, if it's going to be an eyesore in the community, at least if it benefits the community more fully, it's a little bit easier to accept that. I think solar is going to be a change in consciousness about energy in America. I think we're going to see it everywhere. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to get bigger, but we have to do it right.
And let me just add something. If it's an eyesore in the community here, I suspect it's an eyesore in the community everywhere in Woodstock. I think. I'm just going
to say something that the Energy Committee is actually working right now on trying to find some sites for smaller scale. So we're looking at projects that are up to 150 kilowatts, which allows community solar, just at the model that you're talking about. It is difficult to find sites, but we have been looking at a few. And that's the concept that the Energy Committee has been working on in terms of having community solar where we have local investors and it is locally owned.
And had that site been looked at by the...
No. It's probably bigger than we would be looking for, because if anybody has one that's about 2 acres, that would be perfect. We would love to do it.
You indicated that you were open, you wanted open communication.
Yes.
And that you would hear ideas and we would hear ideas. And I think you're a very good speaker, and I think everything you said was fine for what you're doing. Is there anything that you've heard here tonight from any one of us that would make you cancel your sale on this property and go away? No, it's a fair question.
There's nothing I've heard tonight that I don't think is a problem I can't solve. There is nothing I've heard tonight that I don't think I can work out with anybody in this room. Okay? Now, having said that...
The view of the panels from Ellen up the hill and from Andy over there with their beautiful views.
And it's not, and that view is not beautiful because of the solar panels?
Yeah, it's a beautiful field. It's a beautiful field that they look down on. It's horrible. It's going to happen to our block.
So whoever owns that field is obligated to retain that as a field and retain their beautiful view? Wait a minute, there's a little bit about equality in land ownership. Just a little bit of
I
that.
don't want to see a bunch
of
panels sitting out there. That's just pretty much. It's a residential neighborhood. You're coming into.
Trust me, a lot of people don't want to look at
They're making a
a
commercial
lot of people don't
property
want
out
to
of a
look at
residential area, which shouldn't be.
a lot of people don't want to look at a lot of people don't want to look at a pink house or a yellow house or a blue house.
Oh, come on,
Or they don't want to look
John.
at trailers. Everybody has a different standard.
Okay, come on, folks.
That's
So,
different.
yes, Nick.
I'd like to speak as the third person, perhaps in this room, in favor of whether this, I live in Woodstock. I'm a taxpayer of Woodstock, the town of Woodstock. I happen to live in West Woodstock. But I'm also involved with the town in a variety of different ways. And I'm in favor of this project because we have a town plan, which every 5 years we update, and we have just recently updated it, which sets goals for the town, one of which is to become a more sustainable community. It's not an immediate goal, but it's a long-term goal. We have to make steps towards that goal if we're going to achieve and become a community that people recognize, like they did in the environmental movement back with Mr. Marsh and the early days of Marsh-Billings Rockefeller National Park. We have set the standard in this town, and I think this is an opportunity for us to do it again, continually. It is not a panacea. It is, I'd love to have a community type environment, or solar panel project to participate in as well. But we need more than just one. And we need to be a community that is open to this. I see this as a potential to excite people about living in Woodstock. About people coming from down country who are used to using solar panels and saying, look, this community is forward-thinking, it's participating in renewable energy, I might want to investigate this community. But not without, I just want to say that there are people in this town that appreciate an opportunity that might help the community locally and the larger Vermont community and the national and international community just a little bit. And this may be one opportunity for us. Sure, there are concerns. I think Tom has said that he is willing to work with all of us to address as many of those concerns as possible. Are we going to get them all? No. But we're going to work a lot, very hard to get that to the right solution for as many as we possibly can. And I just think there are a lot of downsides, but there are so many positives. And I'm just one resident who thinks there are a lot of positives.
So I'm sort of a fourth outlier voice. I just want to, I came really not sure how I felt about this. And I still am not sure how I feel about it, but I've heard some really interesting stuff. And I live in Townsville. I'm really interested in your idea about the sort of community-owned solar. That makes a ton of sense to me. I don't know how it would work economically, but it feels exciting. I was really excited to hear that there were these rumors of making a whole impermeable surface and digging up land. I was really excited to hear that's not part of your plan, that it's just sort of post holes, big ones, but still. I was really struck by Bruce's comments about water, which everyone who uses the trails knows it's a pretty giant wet mess up there, so I'm not sure whether that really is addressable. You know, I don't, so felt like a really interesting concern. I also am, you know, one of the things I love about living in Tazewell, where I've lived for 20 years, is that it does have a history of real working energy production. You know, it's not a pretty little quaint village. It's a place that's got this, you know, used to until Irene, have an actual working, you know, somewhat ugly but functional hydro production plant. And so I like the idea that we could remain on the forefront of alternative energy production. So I'm still not sure, but I'm glad I came, and I think it's been an interesting conversation.
Anybody can read the application to the Federal Historic Register for placing Tazewell Historic District on the National Historic Register. And I've read it plainly. And I can tell you, the history of Tazewell Village is phenomenal. But one thing I just look at and say is, I'm sort of doing the same thing that happened in Tazewell that made Tazewell Village what it is. It was an industrial center. It was where they made tools, and they used the hydropower to do that. And they built the bridge, and they rebuilt the bridge, and they rebuilt the bridge. And then when the Tafts were done building a sawmill and a brickyard and a tool factory, they started building all the homes. They were the original developer, if you will, and if I'm a developer, you know, I'm following the Taft footsteps. So I don't want to be perceived as the outsider who did something so different, try to bring something so horrible, unique to an area that I feel is almost like this woman just so eloquently stated better than me, that was where it sort of all happened before. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that the people who are in support of this, I fully embrace how you're looking to reduce our carbon footprint and the inevitable need to do renewable resources. If we do not secure the renewable energy credits, we're not reducing our carbon footprint. And I feel that's a vital part of this project that's still in a hopeful stage.
But we legally can't do that yet.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. We retire.
Right, but that's different.
You can also buy them.
You can also buy them. You retire them.
But I mean,
Green Mountain Power already has 400 million of them. Are they gonna buy any more?
The new law is gonna state that they
The new
have
law-
to buy and retire more every year. The amount they have to do is every.
But that's the new law. But right
Which is
now,
not-
there's not a mechanism, there's not a portfolio in Vermont for us to buy them.
No, but there's also many solar developers who are retiring the RECs and not selling in Vermont.
There are many.
Many?
There's at least two within about 15, 20 miles of here.
Two?
Within 15 to 20 miles of developers.
Are you sure of that?
Constantine.
Yes.
So, I'm not gonna take it personally that the majority sound opposed. I'm not gonna take it personally that your energy committee has never reacted to my proposal.
Tom,
They were asked by your select board to come to them and to solicit proposals for energy. But they haven't done that yet. They've waited over a year now, and I'm here, and I'm not going away, and I'm willing to sell the town and other people in the town energy or energy credits, and to do it in a way that works for everybody. For instance, here's an idea that I have mentioned to your energy committee, that what if I sell enough RECs to pay my property taxes, since you're not going to say I don't have to pay property taxes because it's not on city-owned land, just sell that much. And how about if I sell enough to pay for the land? And that's all. And then I retire the rest. It's kind of like a win-win. Crickets on the energy committee. So I know that I don't have to support your energy committee because they'd rather do smaller, and they're trying to find land to do that on, and I hope they can. But it means somebody has to give them the land, and somebody has to do this. And I'm just saying, I'm not the enemy. You're going to have solar panels, whether I do it or they do it somewhere, and I'm hoping that people can embrace that this is positive. This is good. This is positive for the environment and saves money.
Tommy, Energy Committee would like a word.
I'm sorry, folks. The Energy Committee is an action group of Sustainable Woodstock. We are a volunteer committee. We, as the director of Sustainable Woodstock, I work on a lot of projects. Yes, Tom did come to us with a proposal last summer. It was a completely different proposal than what he has here. So it was very different. We also, as volunteers, do not understand all of the implications of the energy scene in Vermont and in New England. It's very complicated. We have had a number of developers who have come to us and said, I have a deal for you. We don't know how to even process it. Admittedly, we did talk to the select board. They did ask us to put out an RFP. We just never got around to it. We worked on other projects instead. I'm sorry that we didn't follow through on that. But we did solarize. We have 26 small installations going up in town. That's something to celebrate. So we are here today. We have a proposal in front of us. And the Energy Committee has not necessarily taken a stand because it's not black and white. This is a complicated issue. We don't have a good solution here. We're not saying we hate this project because we want solar. We desperately want solar. We're just not sure that this is the right way to do it. And Chris can comment.
I'd like to reiterate the fact that what we're looking for is specific suggestions that will make this project better for you, that he is willing to do, that are something more than just, we don't want to look at it, so go away. The harsh reality is that will not fly with the PSB, plain and simple. If we have specific suggestions, we will pass those on. Go away is not a constructive suggestion.
So a specific suggestion, in France, you cannot build a new structure without either putting solar panels on the roof or building a garden on the roof. So why don't, if any new people wanted to build property in Vermont, anywhere, starts demanding solar panels on their roof or an organic garden?
Hey, a garden would be nice.
I'm wondering if the offer is still on the table. For you sell enough to pay your property tax, you sell enough to, what was the other thing?
Land.
Pay for the land and you retire the rest.
I'm not certain. I'm not certain, but I'd like to keep it on the table. That's why I brought it up.
Because
I'd
I
like to
think,
keep it on the panel.
I think the harsh reality is that we don't have a say. And the harsh reality is that the board is going to approve it, because they have not, ever not approved one. And everybody that's gone all the way to the Supreme Court, they've not won. So if there's a way that we can mitigate some of the things by, if people don't want somebody to make a profit, which, God, I wish I could, then let's figure out a way to work in such a manner that we get what we want and he gets what he wants, and we have somewhat of a win-win.
Tom, I attended an energy roundtable that involved the Upper Valley region of both New Hampshire and actually last evening, and we had the opportunity to hear from someone from the Vermont Law School who's very learned and technically aware of all of the regulations and all of the complications of what the utilities are doing today with solar. Would you be willing to work with someone from the Vermont Law School to make this amenable to our community?
I've exchanged quite a few, not quite a few, but a few emails with Ken Jones. Kevin Jones, excuse me, Kevin Jones. And that's probably the individual you talk about. He's extremely versed in the law.
And he's a great resource for all of us community members that might want to educate ourselves more.
Yeah,
Actually,
and
we-
I just, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
The Energy Committee has been working with him, and we do have some resources about community-owned solar. So if anybody's really interested in looking at some of that material,
That'd be great.
we have that available.
So, listen, I've gone back and forth on this issue with Ken about community-owned solar, because Ken loves two things. Kevin loves two things. Number one, community-owned, he loves that idea, and he loves retiring the wrecks. But, again, I love community-owned, but the way that the federal government has found, and the state government has found to make it work is with the tax credit. And that means a third-party investor. Unfortunately, it still costs too much for most of us to be able to afford. And so that third-party owner, and Kevin's trying to say, I think we'll find a way to do it, we'll go around it. And listen, I hope he does, but it's elusive, and I think while that's happening, people are stalling, and I just think, listen, if I build my project, anybody who's a customer of Green Mountain Power, whether they're from Pownell or Woodstock or any place else, can use those net meter credits. I'd love for it to benefit the town. I'd love for it to benefit the town. That's why I'm doing it. And yet, if everybody who waits to find out if the community can do it,
I just feel we have a limited amount of amenable land to use the solar, and I think it's highly critical that we do this in a responsible way that benefits our community directly.
I agree, which is why I selected a site that was close proximity to the substation, yet not right beside it, so it was adding to that infrastructure. That topography was sort of a little dip, so it wasn't all up high on a hill, and that it was set back from Route 4, so it wasn't right in your face, like some solar farms on Route 7 up in Middlebury area. You've heard about those. Little things, and I already had a high transmission line. I felt like I wasn't ruining a pristine field because there was already some aesthetically questionable aspects to it. That's why I'm trying to make the point that I didn't just go into any field, because I think it's difficult to find land in Woodstock. But I found, I think, a site that, by my parameters, seems suitable. And I know it's difficult.
Beyond the aesthetics and the semantics, I think the most important thing is that we actually do reduce our carbon footprint. And as far as I understand, the only way to do that is to own or surrender those renewable energy credits.
We've gone around on this. I don't want to close it off if there are still comments, if there's still things you want to discuss. But I think we've started to go around the track again. So is there any, Zach, do you have a burning issue?
Sure, I was just curious whether the installation will possibly create permanent long-term jobs for local community members.
In my opinion, it's the worst thing about solar. It's really the only bad thing I know about. it doesn't create long-term jobs. It's so dependable. The solar panel technology was really developed by NASA in outer space. They work best in cold weather, believe it or not, okay? And yet, they last for 25 years with very little maintenance. There's a component called an inverter that needs servicing and replacement. But, you know, that's why, the good of it is, you don't see a lot of workmen there. The bad of it is, after 2 or 3 months, it's done. The way I justify the positive of that is that anybody who's involved in a solar project is building up knowledge. And that knowledge base is what's been spread around in the industry of Vermont and is now being transported. You know, people with Vermont companies are now doing business all over the country. It's pretty phenomenal because of their experience.
Folks, we are, I think, at about the end of our road.
I have one final comment. I'm the poor schmuck in the room that's going to be staring at the glass out of my window every day. And my wife and I have spent the last 12 years of our life working hard. We moved to Tassville 2.5 years ago, thinking that, gosh, this is going to be our last house we live in. We're finally going to stop moving and gaining equity and put down some roots. And we've done that. And I feel like I'm on the beginning of a roller coaster ride that Bruce and Darlene have gone through. And I'm going to watch the equity that I've earned in the last 12 years of my life vanish. How do you address that issue? I'm the guy.
I would like to
I got to take it on the cheap.
Number one, when you bought your house, presumably you looked at that field and said, it's beautiful, but I know it won't be there forever. Presumably you thought that.
I did, and I
And
also thought that,
and you knew that something could happen. Number two is that I don't think anybody, anywhere, has any justifiable proof that the assessed value of their property went down because solar panels were 300-400 feet away, 1,000 feet away, 2,000 feet away, in their view. I just don't think there's anything you can do to prove that to me, and I would like details. If you personally are offended by it, that I can understand, and I'd like to talk about that. But I may never be able to change that. But, you know, you had to know when you bought the property, change was possible. It's been happening for 1,000 years. The guy who lives beside the field and loves the woods, eventually has to live with the fact that, hey, I didn't buy it. So I've got to allow whoever did buy it to do whatever's allowed within the law to that property.
But it is a residential neighborhood.
And with the
So I'm just going to say, if anybody wants to hear more or stay in touch, you can sign in on the Sustainable Woodstock sheet, and we'll let you know. But otherwise, you know, we have a planning commission meeting next Wednesday night. You're welcome to attend and make comments there as well.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.